Yo, what is going on, guys? Membro here, back at it with another College Football Weekly podcast. And hopefully the video actually works out this time. I got my camera battery fully charged. So let's just get right into it. Another great weekend of college football. This season has just already been so fun. We're only 5, technically kind of 6 weeks in, and it's already been a blast. Already been a blast. Getting into my week 5 takeaways. This from my Twitter I tweeted out, or X or whatever. Go follow that. We got Georgia, Notre Dame, USC, Washington all survived road tests. All these teams had road tests, starting with the number 1 team in the nation, the Georgia Bulldogs. They looked really shaky against Auburn, and like it was kind of passable against South Carolina, and then they really responded, and they were at home. I believe they were at home in that one. This one, they're on the road and they win by like 7. Really shaky for Georgia, and we'll get into how I think this affects their rankings, because up until this point, I've been giving them the benefit of the doubt, back-to-back national champions, all this. But more and more, they are looking really shaky, and they just don't look like the number 1 team in the nation. Like, there's been other teams that have handled teams like Auburn. Georgia shouldn't have been in a game that close with the Auburn Tigers. And then going to Notre Dame, this one was a different one, I think, because Duke is a legit team. And Notre Dame, the way that they responded, especially after the last collapse against Ohio State, the defense responded. Only held Duke to just 14 points, and really held Duke in that final, maybe last minute drive that Duke was trying to put together. Hopefully Leonard, the quarterback, is okay. That injury looked really bad. I don't know if it was his like knee or his ankle, but it looked really bad there. So hopefully he is okay. Going forward, he might be out a couple of weeks though, considering just how bad that looked. But nevertheless, defensively, Notre Dame showed up. It was 13-0, and Duke comes back 2 straight touchdowns, and you're thinking, oh boy, Notre Dame, this is kind of a repeat of what we saw against Ohio State. But the ability to respond, Sam Hartman really showed up. They were talking about how Sam Hartman had lost a close game when he was at Wake Forest against Duke, and he's able to get revenge for that, kind of get revenge for, atone for the Ohio State game as well. He has a huge run on 4th and 16 that really kind of set the game in, and then they're on the goal line. They just run it, which Duke, I guess, just weren't expecting, and Notre Dame takes the win. Huge win for the Irish. Keep themselves in playoff contention. Great response for Notre Dame. And overall, really great game for Notre Dame. For Duke, the season isn't over, although it will depend on Leonard's injury status. But a real shame, all those Duke fans were there, really hyped in the end, and they end up disappointed. USC and Washington, both these guys a little shaky. USC got off to a really fast start, and I was sitting thinking, oh no, Colorado, this is Oregon all over again. But then Colorado fought back. They showed a lot of toughness, which is, another one of my key points. They hung tough, and they actually scored 20 straight points, and this brought up a lot of questions for USC's defensive coordinator that Lincoln Riley has brought along with him. A lot of people saying, we don't really like this defense. They give up a lot of yards. They're just there for the turnover. They really focus on just getting the turnovers. But you got to also focus on making the tackles and limiting, especially against a big-time team like Colorado. Like Colorado, for how good their offense is, that's not even the best offense that USC is going to face. So USC defense has got to get it together, and I think USC is definitely at this point not the best Pac-12 team, whereas going into the season, a lot of hype around USC. Obviously, Caleb Williams returning, which, to say all this, that's not to demean what Caleb Williams did. 6 touchdown passes. He has got to be the number 1 pick, and with that performance, I think he might have moved himself back into that number one. It's him and Michael Penix. Him and Michael Penix are going back and forth. Michael Penix, he still had a pretty good game, but obviously in Arizona, we look at when USC played Arizona State in the desert, it was a bit shaky. And then in this game, Washington goes down to Arizona, to Tucson. This one's a bit shaky. I believe they win only like 24-17, not as dominant of a win, but I wouldn't really hold it against them too much. I wouldn't have too much concern for Washington because, for one, Arizona is better than a lot of people think. They could string together maybe a couple wins, and all of a sudden you're looking at Arizona maybe creeping into the top 25, especially if they're able to beat, some of these other Pac-12 South teams like UCLA and Utah. But anyway, that's all to say that Washington, no, you shouldn't panic if you're a Washington Husky fan. You get this win, you move on, you get the bye week, and you get ready for Oregon. So yeah, that's top teams surviving on the road. Utah, where the hell is Cam Rising? I don't know what is going on over there with the doctors. Obviously, you want to make sure that your player is good, is healthy. But this must have just been a very bad ACL injury for Cam Rising. He had a whole offseason to recover. He's had multiple games to recover here. And at this point, the Utah offense it really showed that they really needed Cam Rising. And originally, I actually picked the Utes to lose this game in the preseason when I thought they would have Cam Rising against Oregon State. This is the Friday night game against Oregon State. I thought they would have Cam Rising and maybe Brent Keithy and be fully loaded. It was a Friday night game. It was in Corvallis. And that was before we knew that Cam Rising wasn't there, that Brent Keithy wasn't there, that Utah, didn't have all these injuries. Simply put, Johnson nor Barnes can be a starting level QB, especially in a conference with so many great QBs. DJ Uiagalelei, he played a pretty good game. It was really the run game, and we rarely see like the Utes get beat up, but they were beat up in this game. Oregon State was more physical. They were controlling the whole game. It was basically 21-0. It was just a pity touchdown at the end. Really good showing and great response for Oregon State. And this, obviously this begins the cannibalism of the Pac-12. Oregon State loses to Washington State. Then Oregon State beats Utah, giving them their first loss. All this stuff. And then UCLA, I believe UCLA plays like Washington State next week. Maybe UCLA beats Washington State, and all of a sudden you're looking at, well, Utah beat UCLA, but then UCLA beat Washington State, who beat Oregon State, who beat Utah, and then it's going into a whole spiral of kind of beating each other up like the Pac-12 actually usually does. I saw some people going like, man, the Pac-12 with all this hype, but they're still going to just eat each other alive. Well, that's what's happened every single year. Obviously this has been probably the best and most competitive, highest level Pac-12 that it has been in a while, but it's been really the same every year. They all eat each other alive. I do want to make another point with Oregon. There's often been times where they have to go to Stanford and they end up losing a game where they should have won. This one, they started out shaky, but then they remembered, oh yeah, we're Oregon and you're Stanford, and then they hung like 42 on them, and that was that. Bama looks like their old selves. Bama's looking like their old selves. They go in to Mississippi State and beat them pretty badly. The Bama defense is, again, pretty good, and the offense started showing up. Jalen Milroe, has gotten a little more comfortable, and like I said, you just got to get him a little more comfortable. Like, you can't expect him to be Bryce Young, okay? But maybe he can grow into maybe a role like maybe a Tua who's just like a gunslinger. And then also with the running capabilities. Bama, looking back to their old selves, And, you just wait for some of these teams. Bama starts creeping in there. They beat LSU, who's they're not maybe as good as we thought they were. They beat LSU. They start beating people. And all of a sudden, you got Alabama right back in the playoff picture. Like, if Alabama is going to lose, it's probably good that they lose to what is a good Texas team. And that was early in the season. And they can kind of get rolling again against, frankly, these easier teams like Mississippi State, like USF. The defense held it down against Ole Miss. I don't know what the heck happened there. But speaking of Ole Miss, they beat LSU in a complete shootout. This was the most fun game to watch. I feel like every year there's one of these crazy shootout games in the SEC where you don't really expect it that much. But this was a great game, back and forth. Jackson Dart shows up. Lane Kiffin gets a huge win. Brian Kelly, is he on the hot seat at this point? It's tough to say because he did get the win against Alabama last year, which is like a marquee win. You got to get that. But he lost to Florida State 2 times in a row. Like, you couldn't split that series there. You lose this game where, it's not like there's a huge talent gap between Ole Miss and LSU, but LSU does recruit better than Ole Miss. They do technically have more talent, whereas still, though, I think Ole Miss did kind of have the better quarterback, although both Daniels and Jackson Dart are both very good. Michigan is too good for these baby teams. Nebraska is a baby. The Michigan schedule is so incredibly easy. It is so frustrating how easy it is. And also Georgia's schedule is also pretty easy. They're just, hanging tough and on the road against Auburn. And, they're making it look close, making maybe Auburn look better than they really are. Whereas Michigan's just blowing teams out of the water. Michigan, you could definitely easily make the case Michigan is the best team in the Big Ten. But they straight up have not played the teams, especially that Ohio State has played and Penn State as well. By the way, I'm still high on Penn State. Even though they were in kind of a tough win, locked at 10-10 against Northwestern, they ended up pulling it up. For me, with these games where it's you kind of have a shaky start, well, as long as you pull it out and start dominating by the end, that's still a dominant win. You still look at the scoreboard, LSU or Penn State wins big. It's still a dominant win. That's a big plus for me in my book, where you fight through some scares and then you're like, okay, yeah, we're the better team. Let's go out there and win this. So let's go down. Before we go to the AP top 25, let's go down to my top 10, which obviously looks a lot different. Penn State at number 1, as I said. Overall, I'm really liking Penn State, the way they have looked. Their defense is probably the best in the Big Ten. Drew Allar is a very good quarterback. And this Penn State team, something about it that feels like they could make a run. Ohio State at number 2. That Notre Dame win looks better now, because Notre Dame showed that they are actually a pretty good team, and they fought through adversity, and that Ohio State went into South Bend and then won. So Ohio State off a bye. I'll put them in number 2. Georgia, you may say, oh yeah, well, why are you bumping these guys up when they had a bye and moving Georgia down when they still had to play someone? I don't, it's what have you looked like throughout the season. Doesn't matter if you had a bye this week or whatever. Georgia, it's beginning to be a little too shaky at this point. The South Carolina game, okay, it's kind of stormy in that game. But Auburn, you're supposed to beat Auburn. I don't care if it was in Alabama. You're still supposed to beat Auburn by at least double digits, by maybe 20 considering the talent. And Georgia might just all be just Brock Bowers. I mean, I was high on Carson Beck. He showed up big. But in this game, he wasn't as good. And it was really shaky. The turnovers were piling up for Georgia. Honestly, they were kind of lucky to get out of there with the win. Then we got number 4, Texas. I moved Texas ahead of Florida State at this point. Again, these can just flip-flop on all around, but Texas, with their win over Kansas, was very dominant. I saw a stat. They didn't allow Kansas to convert a single time on third down. Their defense showed up big, although, it was against a backup quarterback for Kansas, I believe, but still, Quinn Ewers played pretty good, and Texas is showing that they're a pretty legit team, and the Alabama win, the more that Alabama wins, no matter what, the more that win against Alabama looks better. Then I got Michigan. As I said, they've been blowing teams out, but they really haven't played many people or many teams. Then number 7, I have Washington. Again, I believe that they are the best team in the Pac-12 right now, but right behind them is Oregon, and that game, October 14th, circle it on your calendars, ladies and gentlemen. Washington versus Oregon is going to be a huge game. Playoff aspirations for both of them, and really Pac-12 will really shape the Pac-12. 2 big-time teams, Washington and Oregon. I got them back-to-back, and then USC at number 9. Again, I had USC at, I kind of switched around last week. USC, number 9, definitely behind Oregon. Notre Dame at number 10, that win, again, they're in Duke, they win it. That home crowd was really rocking. Fight through adversity, save their season. Sam Hartman, huge moment. Then I have some honorable mentions. Alabama, and then Oklahoma. Oklahoma has been, again, flying a little under the radar, but now it's going to come to the front view, set up for a huge matchup. Red River Showdown, Oklahoma, Texas. This will be the ultimate test, another tester for Texas. They got their big win against Bama. They looked a little shaky here and there, but they overall just shown up and have more talent. This is now Oklahoma, Red River Showdown. We know what happened last year. We know what's the overall history of this has been Oklahoma, but last year was all Texas. Oklahoma looks like a different team now. Oklahoma looks a lot better. Their defense is actually very good, and they still got that really, good, talented offense. This will be huge. Texas wins, I'm willing to bump them in to number 1. Oklahoma wins, obviously getting bumped in the top 10, top 8, top 7, something like that. And then again, I made another point. LSU has Missouri next, and Missouri is undefeated. They look pretty good. So LSU could fall to like 500, like 3-3. And that would be even worse for Brian Kelly. So let's go down over to the new AP Top 25. Obviously, it looks a lot different than mine. It's based on voting. It's based on, preseason rankings. Okay, you didn't really lose. Let's not really move you around besides what they've been doing to USC. So we got Georgia number 1, Michigan number 2. It's understandable. Basically, the 2 top teams from last year. I mean, TCU, they're whole different team, and Michigan, they still got JJ McCarthy, they still got Blake Corum. Obviously they are right there. So next week Georgia has Kentucky. That could be an interesting one, especially considering Georgia has looked so shaky. Luckily though for Georgia, they are at home in that one, and I think they'll get the win simply because they are at home. They'll have the home crowd boost. And they'll probably grind it out against Kentucky. Michigan at Minnesota, I don't expect any challenge there. And then obviously this one, Texas versus Oklahoma. Ohio State doesn't say, yeah, they're at 4. They play Maryland. There was a lot of talk. Maryland, I believe, is undefeated. They were not in the top 25. Interesting. There, Florida State, they play Virginia Tech. They should be able to handle that coming off the bye. Penn State plays UMass. They're starting to get these easy games now. So obviously there's a huge chance for, at least for in my rankings, for Texas to move up into that number 1 slot. Then we have Washington, Just they're top of the Pac-12 teams. Again, this is looking a little similar to mine with the Washington, with the Oregon, with the USC. Oregon actually moves up the one spot. Last week, it was USC that was above them. Oregon handled business against Colorado and then also went to Stanford and easily handled them. USC has looked a bit more shaky, and they gave up 20 straight points to end the game. So a bit concerning for Lincoln Riley's squad. And then they got to go, they host Arizona. They should be able to win that one. If you're hosting Arizona, the Arizona schools, I feel like you got a much better chance than if you have to go into that crazy desert. And then obviously this is in 2 weeks, the Washington and Oregon game. Notre Dame at number 10, same as me. They got at Louisville. And Louisville is not to be messed around with. Louisville is a very tough team. Like Notre Dame, again, I don't know why they do this to themselves. Like you join a conference, you can just play all those conference games. Like because you're independent, you got to go find these great, all the best teams. They probably didn't expect Louisville to be as good as they are. Like they're running into like Louisville and Duke, teams that they didn't expect to maybe be as good as they are. Then we got Alabama at Texas A&M, and Texas A&M is looking a bit better. Obviously, last year I was just really upset with them and kind of written them off, so I haven't really been paying much attention to them. If they somehow win this game against Alabama, there's going to be a lot of questions for Nick Saban, but I think it will be even more of a testament to maybe Jimbo Fisher and maybe getting his team back on track, even though they did lose to Miami, but who knows? We'll see. Oklahoma coming in at number 12. They move up 2 spots. Washington State, they coming in at number 13. If they can pass this test, this will be a test at UCLA. This is a classic Pac-12 cannibalism game right here. If they can pass this test, Washington State might really be legit, especially considering they beat Oregon State, and we saw what Oregon State did to Utah, let it all being that Utah was just basically a wounded animal on the road. North Carolina at number 14. North Carolina has just been kind of cruising. They got Syracuse. We'll see about them. Oregon State moves up 4 spots. They're tied for the most move up with Ole Miss. Ole Miss, I'm not completely sold on them. Yes, they had a big win against LSU. I'm not completely sold on them, though, for just kind of how bad they looked against Alabama. Oregon State, though, this might be one of those things where, yeah, you lose to Washington State, but maybe they can build some momentum with this. They got Cal. Cal is still a pretty tough team, but I think they can be able to handle. They're able to handle them. Maybe Oregon State starts to get rolling, and we start to talk about them as a real threat in the Pac-12. Miami, still looking good. Miami and North Carolina, I believe they play in a couple weeks maybe. And that could be a very exciting contest if both of them kind of take care of their business against Georgia Tech and Syracuse. This isn't playing sound. Okay, good. Utah is the biggest fall. They moved down 8 spots. Yeah, look, they didn't have their quarterback, Cam Rising. They're just straight up they didn't look good at all Friday night. We'll see that they can get a bye week and maybe turn it around against Cal. But it will really depend on Cam Rising. Like this Cam Rising injury is kind of costing Utah the entire season, honestly. This is a game that Utah has the talent to win, just except the talent wasn't there. Like the quarterbacks were not able to throw the ball on target. You saw Nate Johnson, just the overthrows, the underthrows. It was really ugly for the Utes. Duke, I think, they punished them 2 spots. Okay, it was still a pretty hard-fought game. I expect them to beat NC State, although, who knows, wild ACC. Kentucky, we talked about their matchup with Georgia. They're coming in at number 20 at 5-0. Missouri, they got LSU. They can have a chance to really and I don't know. Okay, LSU is still in this top 25. Why? just kick them out and put Maryland in, who is a 5-0 team. Maryland coming in at technically like 26th place. Put them in there. There's, James Madison, you could maybe make the case because they're undefeated, but Maryland is a Power 5 team and they're 5-0. Why not put them in there instead of an LSU? Well, yes, it was a close game on the road, but there are 2 losses. You look through, I don't think anyone else, no one else in the top 25 has 2 losses. And this is just kind of part in because LSU had such a high preseason ranking. Fresno State, they have at Wyoming, could be a test. We'll see how legit Fresno State is. They're kind of leading the group of 5 teams. They're the only one, I believe, that's in the top 25. And then just because there's so many good Power 5 teams. And then Louisville, they're hosting Notre Dame. If Louisville can beat Notre Dame, look out for Louisville, another contestant for that ACC matchup or ACC conference. So yeah, that's gonna do it for me. Again, this is like 30 minutes long. I always try to keep it a little shorter, but I got so much to say. Hey, you can put me on TV with a 30-minute show right here. So thank you guys all for watching and listening. Make sure to go follow the Twitter at membro_CFW. Make sure to go follow the podcast on whichever platform you like, and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're watching this over on YouTube. All right, thank you guys all for watching. Peace.